Ex-crypto king Sam Bankman-Fried used customer funds to make millions of dollars in illegal political donations, specifically with the intent of buying influence. That's according to the latest filings in the SEC's indictment of the former CEO. Prosecutors also say Bankman-Fried gave contributions of at least $25,000 to campaigns and political action committees, quote, in the names of other persons.
When asked whether President Biden would be returning any illegal donations made to his 2020 campaign, here's what White House spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre had to say.
We got campaign donations that may have come from customer money to return those funds.
So look, I'm covered here by the Hatch Act, limited on what I can say, and anything that's connected to political contributions from here, I would have to refer you to the DNC.
I'm asking the president's opinion, though. Does he want those people who...
No, you asked me two questions. You asked me about will he return the donations, and then you asked me about his opinion. I'm answering the first part, which is I'm covered by the Hatch Act from here. I'm limited on what I can say, and I just can't talk to political contributions or anything related to that. I cannot speak about it from here.
Bankman-Fried currently remains in custody in the Bahamas and was denied bail yesterday, despite his attorney arguing that he suffered from depression, insomnia, and ADD for over a decade. That's part of their argument.
Yeah, there has been some increased scrutiny on his parents and some of the statements that they've made, and some questions about whether or not if some of his decisions have been motivated by their legal counsel and whether or not they were really equipped to give him good legal counsel. And this kind of a defense feels opportunistic.
He should absolutely not be granted bail. I would assume he has a flight risk. He's in the Bahamas. He could get himself to somewhere where there's no extradition.
Right.
So yes, it was correct to deny him bail.
And so that kind of defense, I have anxiety. Blah, blah. It's almost as convenient as Karine Jean-Pierre's dodging behind the Hatch Act.
That's not what the Hatch Act is.
I mean, you can seem a little bit less giddy about the idea of saying, "Oh, there's an excuse. I put up an excuse."
The Hatch Act prevents government officials from, in their official capacity, using government resources to campaign, not to answer questions.
Yeah,
so that was just not true.
We had this issue on the Bernie campaign where he had given a number of great speeches or interviews from the office, and it's, can we use this in a political ad? Can we use the speech that he gave in his congressional capacity in this thing that we're trying to clip? And it was very annoying because we were tiptoeing around that sort of thing. This question about whether is Joe Biden going to keep political donations from SBF? I'm not sure that it qualifies. And even if it did, I would like her to use a little bit more discretion and not seem so gleeful about having an excuse as she did.
I mean, it is interesting because if you steal a bunch of money and then give that to someone else, are they on the hook for? I mean, it gets dicey, and that's not quite analogous to the situation. The SEC is charging Bankman-Fried right now with defrauding his investors, not the people whose money he took. Now there might be a separate. I think the consumer, the CFTC might be filing a claim that has to do with that. So this is going to be a mess.
Yeah.
Sorting out whose money went where, what, and was vaporized by this guy.
Yeah. Well, look, in the wake of his being arrested, right before the congressional hearing he was supposed to testify in, there has been a theory that's been floated by some prominent conservatives. Elon Musk floated it, as well as a number of Congress members. I believe we have a clip.
Bahamian authorities to put him in custody so he would not testify today? I mean, are you inferring that?
I'm not inferring, but everybody knew he was going to testify. I mean, the chairman of the committee, the ranking member, last night it was set that he would testify now. It's interesting that this was taken up. I'm not going to refer anything, but after reading what we found now from the Twitter files and others, at least I believe it would be important to ask the question. Did anybody know? Was there any action taken? I don't know what to trust anymore from this perspective. Why would they, when all of his money goes to Democrats, why would they want him not to have to answer these questions?
And it's not true that all the money went to Democrats. There was money given to Republicans as well. But it's not, it's not wild to think that some part of the system might want to shush him up because he's so forthcoming, so unusually forthcoming, to his own detriment in the interviews that he's given, to the detriment of his legal defense.
Sure.
So I can imagine not wanting him to say things about conversations he was having with legislators who wanted to regulate crypto in the manner that he did, the things that he could theoretically reveal.
Sure,
now, it starts to get a little conspiratorial. Well, does like Biden's DOJ want to do that? And like, is everyone working in the same kind of concert here? And because also there were Republicans who theoretically would need to be protected.
Yes.
And the more straightforward case is just that like law enforcement is going to bring him to justice and lock him away because that's what law enforcement does. Like when they've compiled evidence on you, they arrest you and they put you away, and they now have enough evidence, and so they're proceeding.
Yeah, so the pushback is that basically some conservatives are framing his absence from the hearing where he would testify as some kind of absolution, as though he's not going to be tried in court and interrogated much more thoroughly by the DOJ
and he's going to be offered less time. I still think he's going to get a lot of time, but he's going to be offered something less in exchange for denouncing or whatever.
But the questioning that he's about to get is obviously going to be much more acute and kind of better prepared from the people who are actually bringing these charges against him than from some random Republican senators that tend to grandstand. Both parties do this, but who tend to grandstand in these kinds of hearings. Now, I take that point. I think that's right. Elon Musk tweeted, SBF was a major Democratic donor, so no investigation. No, there's obviously an investigation. Him not being at the hearing is not a lack of an investigation. However, I do think that some of the kind of liberals who push back against this theory are sidestepping that there is a particular optics issue for Democrats in particular, where you have Maxine Waters on this committee who has personally received donations, and a bunch of conservatives who will be able to ask them.
High-fived him.
Right. Well, Maxine Waters isn't going to be in the room during his testimony in court for people to point out and say, did you give money to her? It's not going to be that same kind of optics kerfuffle as a Senate testimony, congressional testimony might have been.
But some conservatives are kind of trying to have it both ways right now, because there were a lot of people on the right critical of Sam Bankman-Fried and his lobbying for Democrats, saying that, this was him setting up his own protection. He's never going to get arrested because he's bought himself protection. And then he gets arrested, or detained, about to be arrested. Yeah. And then they're saying, they're only doing that because we made a thing about it. We held them accountable. We shamed the media for going soft. And I did think the media went a little soft for a while.
They did.
So now they're leaping into action because they've been correctly shamed for not doing enough. And now we're saying, and that's bad because we wanted to give him a few more days. Do you see how that's like, now that's leaped every way on this to just kind of be like.
It's almost impressive how well Republicans have managed to stick this idea that Sam Bankman-Fried was uniquely pro-Democrat. When Bankman-Fried himself has come out and said, for one, my business partner was the one who just donated to the Republicans and I was donating to the Democrats purely for optics reasons. And then the Republicans are kind of falling for that silly optics. And moreover, that Sam Bankman-Fried made really clear, and I think this is a point that I'm going to continue to stress because I think it's important. He made it very clear that his priority was getting involved in primaries, not general elections. Because if you get involved in primaries on all sides of the aisle, whoever ends up in the general election is going to advance your legislative agenda. And that's exactly what was happening here. And it really does, I think, genuine populist conservatives a disservice to have the leaders of the party so willing to ignore what was an effort to buy off the Republican Party too, an effort that came very close to being successful and ultimately, depending on the legs of
he did spend a lot, as far as we know, as of yet. Maybe this will change. Maybe we'll find out he spent money as well on right-wing media or right-wing nonprofit organizations. He seems to have spent a lot of money on left of center and progressive media, having the effect of this very kind of glowing approach to this guy, all the adjectives, all that.
That's absolutely true. And it seemed like the media spending was much more biased, and the charitable spending was much more biased toward kind of left causes. Although I also will say the way these causes are being described as like left broadly is a complete misnomer. I interviewed a reporter from Puck who's been doing very close coverage of this sector and did actually an in-person interview, not in person, but an interview with Sam Bankman-Fried just before he was arrested about all of this. And the point that he was making was that, despite all of the kind of liberal media coverage, at the end of the day, Sam Bankman-Fried himself said specifically, I wanted to capitalize on the perception that I was a liberal person, and knowing that you can't have it both ways. You have to go into a camp. And so that he specifically gave dark money for the purpose of misleading Republicans in exactly the way that they're being misled.
Well, and his main cause, this effective altruism, is it's an interesting philosophy. It's not. I wouldn't call it of the left. It's not a conservative philosophy either, but it's somewhere in this.
He backed, for instance, we talked a lot about this, Jessica Cisneros, who was a progressive running against the last pro-abortion Democrat, Henry Cuellar. He backed Henry Cuellar in that race. Over and over again, he was backing candidates that weren't the most left, that weren't the most progressive, that weren't the most aligned with this humanitarian agenda he was giving money to for other causes around the way. But in fact, a kind of political donation scheme that one might say aligned, generally speaking, with the establishment of the Democratic Party. Yep. So again, I'm sorry,
surprise.
Beat a dead horse. It's always this establishment alignment and that we're distracted from because there are these like partisan aspects to it, but it's the center that always benefits.
Yeah, well, I don't mean to sound naively hopeful, but I don't think his charitable giving to the establishment is going to protect him from a very lengthy prison sentence.
I think that's right.
More Rising right after this. Stay with us.